They're always out there looking. They're always trying to expose us. Most of the time they fail. But someone did a search and find on my Twitter profile, and they searched MAC, like Mid-American Conference. And apparently I've never typed the word MAC, because I refer to the MAC as a word. I don't believe that. Just to be clear about my stance on this, I believe I have typed MAC before on the internet. But some are saying no. And frankly, we don't have the budget to fact check it right now. So that's where it stands. Like my reputation hangs in the balance of being the future commissioner of this sport. If I've never said MAC, that's going to be used against me. Negative recruiting will be used against me if that's real. So please, someone out there, research it. Jesse's not going to do it because he just found out about this. We're jam-packed. We're high atop and not so bad downtown Nashville, Tennessee, especially when you compare it to the forecasts that I'm seeing in South Bend and Columbus this weekend. State College doesn't figure to get out of the mid-20s for that game Saturday. SMU, average kickoff temperature for their games this year, 72 degrees. We did have the budget to fact-check that. It's Tuesday night. It's December 17th, the year of our Lord 2024. We're proudly brought to you by them, Academy Sports and Outdoors. We got trouble at USC. I can no longer beat around the bush on this. USC's in trouble. Ohio State could be in trouble if they lose this weekend. Ryan Day could be in trouble if they lose this weekend. I don't want to sound the alarms. I don't want to be an alarmist show. I'm not putting the guy on the hot seat. A lot of folks will, and it's not just the fringe minority anymore. There are a couple of boxes you have to check at Ohio State, and if you keep not checking them, you're in trouble. So, my personal advice to Ohio State is to win the game this weekend. That's my personal advice. I know it's a little radical, but that's how I see that game. We already broke down the game. I'm going to break down a little bit in deeper detail what I think would happen if it were to go sideways for Ohio State. The real biggest threat to college football is not what most people are spending time talking about right now, in my estimation. The playoff, whether you want it in the BCS format or whether you want a 64-team playoff, I do not think that's a big threat, because even if you don't get your way, and trust me, I haven't, you're not going to stop watching. I didn't stop watching. But there are threats out there that over the long haul, if it doesn't get fixed, could lead to some people feeling pretty indifferent or agnostic towards this sport. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to try and get out ahead of it instead of trying to play catch-up like our friends in NASCAR ended up doing all those years ago. All that, plus some good old-fashioned busted bold predictions. Always how I love to end a show. They're watching us in Saraland, Alabama, South Bend, Indiana, Long Beach, Mississippi, and Long Beach, New York. Both checked in, and I'm sure both lovely this time of year for different reasons. Cedar Falls, Iowa is also tuned in. Let's do what we always do. Let's crack open an ice-cold, zero sugar ZEVIA. Tonight we're going black cherry. We take not one, but two sips. Because I'm kind of parched. And let's dive into the show. I want to be careful, because I got to straighten the can up. I want to be careful because the other night, as you know, I came on the air and I said, we do not do a negative show. And so I'm not doing a negative show tonight. I do want to be cautious. I want to get out in front of something. Colin, that was not your end point. Here's your better end point. If I do a mailbag episode this time of year, like we did last week, majority of the questions are about who do you think is going to make the playoffs? What do you think about the structure of the playoffs? What do you think about the portal? What do you think about NIL? And a lot of it basically is just, hey, do you think some stuff needs to get fixed? Do you think anything's broken about college football? And I'm like, well, there's always stuff that needs to get fixed. Love the sport. Love it. Greatest sport on the face of the earth. Even with all its flaws, you can run your hand over college football and there are grains of sand all over it. Very much an imperfect surface on this sport of ours right now, but we love it, man. Love it. I'd take this 10 miles over covering and or talking about any other sport for a living. So I've immersed myself in this my whole life. I don't plan on going anywhere. But the follow-up question that I've gotten a lot lately is, are there things happening right now that could make you walk away, or do you think there are things happening to college football right now that could turn you off? Or if they couldn't turn me off, could they turn enough people off to where college football is not as popular as it is? And your instinct is to say football's a monster. Football's never going to fade away. And I'm right if I say that. Football's never going to fade away, but that's not the question. The question shouldn't be phrased that way. It's not an A or a B. It's not a zero sum. It's not an all or nothing. That was the incorrect usage of zero sum. It's not all or nothing. It's not 24 million people watch a conference title game or no one watches it. It could be 24 million to 19 to 16.5 to 13 3/4. It could be precipitous in its decline. How would that happen, though? And is there some stuff in the soup right now that doesn't need to be in the soup that if we leave it in there could ruin it? Well, yes, but I don't think it has anything to do with the playoff. Most of the complaints that I've seen, and I may not be looking in the right places, but most of the complaints I've seen lately have to do with the playoff. A lot of people upset, for instance, that Arizona State and Boise got a first-round bye. I got you there. We agree that the format's jacked up. I think they'll fix it. I've done a whole other video on that. So that may have you upset, but have any of you really thought about walking away from college football and not watching it anymore because you think Arizona State should be in, but not with a first-round bye? I don't think so. And even someone who said yes to that, I don't really think you mean it. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying you lied about that. I'm not calling you a casual. I'm just saying you said something casual. It's not the playoff, no matter what the structure of the thing is, that would turn people off. I didn't want the playoff to expand. It expanded. I promise you, I'm going to watch every game. I'm going to go to a game or two each round. I had a private aviation company hit us up today. Jesse, Colin, I didn't tell you about that. Gelby, I hope you're listening as well, so we'll workshop that idea off air. But, I'm all in on the playoff. I'm all in on college football no matter what the playoff format is. However, I don't think that college football is totally safe. And certainly no form of entertainment in the American ecosystem is immune from poor decision-making ruining it. Football is no different in that vein than any other. There are some skeptics out there who say, doesn't matter. Football could have the worst decision-makers with their hands on the wheel, but as long as it's football, I'll always watch. Well, that's not true. That's not true because I see the numbers for the USFL or the XFL. I see the numbers for other leagues that are playing football, and a lot of you don't watch those. So if it's just football you're seeking, all of those should do bonkers numbers. There's something more to the adhesive that connects you to the NFL or that connects you to college football than just, well, it's 100 yards by 53 1/3, and the ball's shaped the same, and the lines look the same. Let's go. Some of you just love this sport and you'd watch it no matter where they played it, and that's great. Most of you aren't like that. So I want to take you to something James Franklin said the other day, because as you know, we were on the air the other night, and Bo Pribula, who is the backup quarterback for Penn State this year, he's played for them this year. He had to come in and win them a game against Wisconsin this year. I mean, they literally would not be in this position had he not come in and bailed them out. So it's not a guy you've never seen before. He's played this year. He's their backup. He would be the first one taking snaps this Saturday if Drew Aller went down in the first quarter, except that he wouldn't, because as we were on the air the other night, we got the breaking news that Bo Pribula had entered the transfer portal. And that's the structure of the sport right now. So anyway, I think some folks are maybe fans of college football, but you don't so much pay attention to the weeds. I know we got a big chunk of people who use our show to get caught up on college football, but you're not in the weeds of it. So here's what you need to know, and I'm about to play you some sound from James Franklin. This sport's a mess right now. December, the calendar, is a mess right now. Our version of free agency is you can go in the transfer portal and move pretty much anywhere and anytime you want to, but there is a window. The window just so happens to overlap with the college football playoff. That you heard me right. The ability for players to move overlaps. It literally lays over on the calendar our playoff. And you may think to yourself, well, there's no way that's true, because if that were the case, that would mean players on playoff teams, if they want to move, would have to go in the portal while their team's in the playoff. That's not right, huh? Yes, you're understanding me. Oh, it's very wrong, but you are correct in that that's the way it is. So Bo Pribula goes in the portal the other night. Some folks say, shame on that kid for bailing on his team. I knew, because, I mean, folks like us are immersed in this thing all day. He was going in, and he really doesn't have that much of an option. Here's James Franklin, his head coach, talking about it later.
We got problems in college football, and I can give you my word. Bo Pribula did not want to leave our program, and he did not want to leave our program until the end of the season. But the way the portal is, and the timing of it and the way our team is playing. And when you play the position of quarterback and there's only one spot and those spots are filling up, he felt like he was put in a no-win situation.
If you want to know, in the long term, what could end up putting a dent in the popularity of college football, it's how backwards the sport is. It's the fact that for a long time, in the absence of real leadership, the wrong people snaked their way into positions of leadership and got their hands on the wheel and drove the thing in the ditch. The wrong people have made decisions in this sport for far too long. That's how you've got unrestricted free agency, and then you've simultaneously got like no cap on spending. The playoffs overlap with the portal, which also somehow overlaps with coaching carousel season. National Signing Day is during the week of conference championship games, not to mention the portal, then bleeding over into bowl season and subsequently the college football playoff season. Conferences have been gutted. The conferences have been realigned to the point where the sport features a team that can see the Pacific Ocean out its window, playing conference games against teams that can see the Atlantic Ocean out of their window. Emphasis on the word conference, which used to have regional and territorial meaning and doesn't anymore. So how do you fix that? Because the problem's already there. You can complain about it all day. How do you fix it? Well, number one, very basically, you've got to first get the people out of the room that made the mess. You can watch them make the mess. Do not then allow them to say, hold on, we'll clean it up. No, you had your shot. You tried your way. So you got to strong arm them. These are usually pretty weak-minded people. These are people that in the absence of real leadership have slithered their way into positions that they are wholly unqualified for. But the thing about those kinds of people is they'll shrink back into the corner pretty quickly if real leadership walks in. Real leadership is pretty broad-shouldered, figuratively if not literally. It's a loud voice. It's someone who's not afraid to look you in the eye and just tell you to shut up, because what you're saying is dumb. It's not afraid to tell you that you've made a mess, and so the children need to get out so the adults can take care of it. Now, those kinds of people exist in this sport. It's just usually those kinds of people have not had a desire to climb up the administrative ladder, because they're usually busy either coaching or playing, or they're usually busy running their own companies. And so what you got to hope is you got some of those folks who are well enough off financially to where they're willing to take this on. I think we have those kinds of people out there. I think in some ways they're already working behind the scenes. But what I'm trying to get to here is once you identify those people, they got to step up, and then you've got to demand action. For example, if you were to bring up right now the fact that it's insane this quarterback from Penn State has to go in the portal, not because he wants to right now, but because despite the fact that this team's in the playoff, if he wants to transfer, he may be SOL if he doesn't do it right now. Well, that's because the calendar's jacked up. They would tell you, if you complained about that, well, what can we do about it? Look at the way the academic calendar's structured. We have semesters in this sport. You know, it's still student athletes, wink, nod. We can't do anything about it. You haven't done anything about it. I think almost certainly the last idiot in the room understands the calendar's not going to stay this way forever. There will be change. Eventually, you'll have to drag people kicking and screaming over the finish line, but there will be change eventually. And so someone like me looks at that strictly from a pragmatic standpoint and say, if it's going to get fixed eventually, what stops us from fixing it now? The only thing that stops us from fixing it right now is the right people in the room. But here's the warning. Here's what I'm trying to get to. It is possible that people en masse leave anything in the entertainment world. They could leave Yellowstone just as quickly as they could leave watching pro wrestling, just as quickly as they could leave one of their favorite singers, just as quickly as they could get turned off from college football. It's as simple as taking the adhesive away. There is something that's attracted me to college football my whole life. There's something that attracts you to college football. That's something that you love about it. It's not just the superior athleticism. If all you cared about was watching football played at the highest level, you just watch the NFL on Sundays. There is something unique unto college football that attracts you, that attracts me, that attracts all of us, that you really can't find anywhere else. Therein lies its value. A lot of that's pageantry and tradition, but I will tell you, a lot of it is someone who lives in Tupelo, Mississippi, really respecting and adoring that Ole Miss logo. Someone who lives in Johnson City, Tennessee, respecting that Power T. Someone who lives in Southern California, respecting that SC logo, and understanding that for their whole lives, basically, the guys who have been fortunate and blessed enough to wear that uniform chose that university. They weren't drafted there. They were recruited there. They probably had many other options, and they chose Ole Miss. They chose Tennessee. They chose USC. And it meant something because the loyalty that they showed that brand over the span of 3, 4, 5 years, with very few exceptions, was consistent. They were there. They're there as a freshman. They're there as a senior. Just like you're there every year. Just like you've been bought in. You weren't fortunate enough or blessed enough to play there. In all likelihood, God did not grant you that kind of athletic ability, but you loved that the ones who did have it bought in and then largely stayed. And if someone didn't, it was the exception to the rule. It wasn't the rule. And what that reflected was they adhered to some of the same values and principles. They loved some of the same thing about that logo that you did. And so there was sort of a symbiotic relationship there. When you see that thrown in the garbage, and when you see mercenaries, and when you see a transactional state overtake college football and college athletics, I am telling you point blank that turns off a lot of people. I know a lot of you are watching this right now nodding your head. Now, you haven't left. I haven't left. I feel the way I'm saying it right now. I feel this. You haven't left. And it would take a lot more for you to leave. But it would be the height of arrogance and outright ignorance in this country to think that college football could never fall victim to people being turned off to the point where there's irreversible damage done to it. There's nothing in world history that's ever been immune to that. You could talk sports, you could talk entire empires. You put the wrong people in charge and things can go south really quickly. And what you find is, once things start going south really quickly, really sometimes doesn't matter once you reach terminal velocity, whether you get the right hands on the wheel or not, you can't turn it around. We're nowhere near that point in college athletics. We're nowhere near that point in college football. That's why it's important to get the right hands on the wheel now. Happy you're with us. Very happy you're with us. Happy show from here on out. Just wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of you are thinking that, so I wanted to go ahead and say it. Academy Sports and Outdoors. They're not going anywhere. Well, they're going up, up, up. They're not going anywhere south, although you can find them everywhere in the South and beyond. Academy Sports and Outdoors uniquely aware that it's almost Christmas, uniquely aware that a lot of you are headed out to tailgate in very cold weather this weekend, and it's not just a college football playoff. I know we've got FCS playoffs going on as well. They know, just go gear up. Don't ask questions, other than can you afford it, and you can. Go gear up. If you can't get there in person, academy.com has you covered. They are the presenting partner of this show. They've rolled with us virtually from the beginning, and we really appreciate them. All right. Now, as for the forthcoming college football playoff, I think there are several wild card aspects of this playoff coming up. If I were to ask you right now, you're just driving around in Des Moines, I'm asking you, take the entire playoff. What's the biggest wild card? It could be a coach, it could be a player, it could be a unit, it could be a position group, it could be an entire team. What's the biggest wild card? I got several of them. I'm just curious in the comment section maybe where your mind goes. Georgia as a team is a massive wild card here. I picked them to win the national title the other day, and it's dangerous, yeah, because they're rolling with a backup quarterback, but I don't think that you can just discount what we've seen in college football in years past, and it could happen here, and that is you got to understand college football works a little different than the NFL. In the NFL, if you lose your starting quarterback, you're pretty much screwed. In college football, you're sometimes screwed. But also at a place like Georgia, where they recruit very deep, and they're a very complimentary program, they have historically been able to lean on a ground game, or they've been able to lean on defense. But they got a ton of elite players in that locker room, prideful players in that locker room. And what can happen is when your starting quarterback goes down, you got a galvanization that happens in the locker room. It happened at halftime against Texas. Don't forget, that wasn't a lead they had to hold on to in the second half of the SEC championship game. They trailed. They had to go take the lead with Gunnar Stockton, their backup quarterback, playing. And he had to stick his face in one of the sharpest fans the sport has shown us all year, and had to lower his shoulder and go hold on to a ball and get a first down and then get him inside the goal, and then they go win the game. That was probably the best shot of energy that program got all season. That includes coming all the way back against Alabama, because I was on the field for that one. That sideline was juiced. But think about what this could mean for them in the postseason, because I'm of the belief you're going to see a really good version of Georgia in the playoffs. Everyone looking at them and discounting them in a lot of these brackets I've seen today because they're going to play their backup quarterback. What you perceive as a weakness could end up being a net strength. Not because Gunnar Stockton is as good as Carson Beck, but here's what really matters. If Gunnar Stockton playing brings out the best of that team, then that team will be better equipped to win a national title than they would have been if Carson Beck played. That's what matters here. That's why it's a wild card. I think the Texas quarterback position is a really big wild card. I don't say Quinn Ewers, because if Texas does what I think they're going to do in this postseason, it won't just be number 3 playing. I think Arch Manning will play as well. I will continue to say I was very surprised that he wasn't more of a factor in their game plan in the SEC championship game. I think he will be against Clemson. I think he will be moving forward. I believe they'll win that game. I believe Clemson matches up horribly with them. Candidly, they may not need Arch Manning to get past Clemson. There I go discounting Clemson again. This is just ripe to end up in a hype video. But I think the Texas quarterback position and the way they handle that, that's a big wild card, because if we watch them against Clemson, just kind of workshop it in your mind. You're watching that game this Saturday. Texas is up 20-6 at halftime, and then they add another 17 in the second half, and it's a good, healthy mixture of Arch Manning and Quinn Ewers, and Arch is bringing something totally different to the table. Sark is able to show a lot of things that your future opponents have to prepare for. That's a big wild card. I think Penn State is the most slept-on team that could actually win this out of the entire bracket. This is not, there's nothing wrong, Colin. I'm just pausing for a second so people can laugh. Still pausing. And, all right, if you're still laughing, it's disrespectful. Penn State is not my pick to win the national championship here, but Penn State is in a very fortuitous situation in the bracket, and the last time we saw them was the Big Ten championship game when they lost to Oregon, but had 2 guys rush for over 100 and had Drew Aller throw the ball really well in the second half against the number 1 overall seed in the playoffs. So you ask yourself, at least I do, at least I ask myself, do we see anyone hit a stride here that we haven't seen from them? I think that about Tennessee. I think that about Penn State. I think to myself, if we were to just get that version of them, I know they can play defense. I know what they have outside on the edge. I know that they can get after the quarterback. But if they found themselves a little bit offensively, they'll beat SMU and they'll beat Boise, and they'd match up very favorably with whoever they'd play in the semifinals. So that's a wild card, because you know what else could happen? They could go in a turtle shell and get upset by SMU. That's why we call it a wild card instead of a foregone conclusion. You know what else I wonder about? I wonder about the Oregon defense. I also wonder if you're subscribed to the channel. We got a lot of folks watching live. I know a lot more will watch this video. This is college football all year, nothing else. And we appreciate you being here. It's always free. We just ask that you subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't already, do it. And if you think you have, check to make sure. Oregon's defense is a wild card here, because Oregon is in a situation where they're going to catch the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State. And by default of the fact that that team won the previous week, they will have looked good. They will be a really big threat. And the last time we saw Oregon's defense, I don't want to say they got exposed because they won. Maybe the style of game's not the same if they play again, but Penn State had some success against them. So Oregon did what it took to win, but Oregon also is going to face 2 or 3 teams that can really get after it offensively, personnel-wise. That doesn't mean if they play Texas, that's guaranteed to happen. Or if they play Tennessee, they may shut Tennessee out in the first half. Everyone else did this year, so maybe they would. That's why it's a wild card. The Oregon defense, do they come to play? Are they playing at a championship level? And then, Colin, I don't know if you have this. Do we have the entire bracket that we can just look at? I mean, even if we don't have it, people can picture it in their minds. Because we have a 1 through 12. There it is. So we have a 12-team playoff. It's the first one we've ever seen. I'll tell you the biggest wild card in this whole bracket, this whole model is finding out how compressed the field is. Because in years past, if we had a 12-team playoff in college football, it would have been blowout city. I know this because we had mostly blowouts in a 4-team field. And the reason is because by the time we got to December, a couple of teams had elevated above the pack. That hasn't happened this year. Now, what we've got to find out is, do we still have a little bit of order about things? Because we have Texas favored by double digits against Clemson. We got Ohio State favored by about a touchdown against Tennessee. Penn State, big-time touchdown plus favorite against SMU. Notre Dame, same thing, touchdown plus favorite against Indiana. If that's the way it is, that feels orderly. But this has not been an orderly season. We have had a parity-driven season all year long. We've had a lot of insane competitive balance all year long. So what we got to find out is, does the playoff look like that? Because if the playoff looks like that, that's how you end up with something like Arizona State playing for a national title. That's how you end up with SMU in the semifinals. Do we have that kind of, compacted playoff field? Does the playoff resemble the regular season, or is it more orderly? Just some things I'm paying attention to. I've been 24,000+ miles this year on the road, just going to college football games, courtesy of Quick Trip, because they have fueled the whole new Saturday tour all year. We'll go up to Columbus this Saturday. Who knows where we're going to go the next weekend. But we appreciate them. They've put a ton of free gas in your tanks this year, as evidenced by what we have seen all over the socials. And I just humbly ask that you continue to visit our partners, the cold brew stations inside. It's a wonderful time of year. Someone once told me Hogwarts is magical this time of year. I would counter with the fact that that's an insane thing to say about a place that doesn't exist. Quick Trip does exist, and it is very much magical this time of year. It's going to be ugly for me when I get home, but I said what I said. Transfer portal. Right after I take a sip of water. I have the ZEVIA here, but the throat requires water right now. So, what do you think about the transfer portal right now? It's pretty ablaze, isn't it? Things on fire. John Mateer, new #1 player overall in the portal. I would venture to guess that even as good as he was this year, a lot of you didn't watch him. That's okay. Washington State was pretty hard to find this year. He had over 3,000 passing yards and 27 touchdowns. He added another 820 on the ground and 15 more rushing touchdowns. 6'1", 220. He's leaving Washington State. Probably going to be a one and done, but has 2 years left to play. Oklahoma needs him bad. I would consider Oklahoma the slight favorite to land his services right now. A lot of this is up in the air. A lot of it is still written in pencil. But the offensive coordinator that he played for last year, guess where he works now? Brent Venables just hired him. Stands to reason Brent Venables understood the score there, understood what was going on. That probably gives you the inside track. It will not shock you to learn that Miami is a player here as well. To what degree? I don't know. We'll find out. But Miami looks at that and they say, a transfer quarterback from Washington State, huh? Where have we heard that before? That is where Cam Ward was 2 years ago. So I'm watching that. Luke Kromenhoek is now out of the portal because he's committed to Mississippi State. He signed with Mississippi State. He's #2 quarterback available, #5 overall. He was at FSU. Gus Malzahn came in, not a great fit, so he goes elsewhere. He's going to probably compete against Blake Shapen. I think he's a much better system fit under Jeff Lebby there, 6'4", 208. A lot of these quarterbacks on the move. But I'll tell you another position that we were talking about the other night, and then moves were made as soon as we went off the air. Texas A&M is getting after it a little bit. Micah Hudson, the former 5-star at Texas Tech, has now, since we got off the air the other night, landed at Texas A&M. When I told you, and I winked on the air, I said, I'm closely monitoring Texas A&M at receiver. It's because we thought the news had already gone public, but it hadn't. But it did right after we went off the air. They also landed Mario Craver. So those are 2 top 40 players. It was a position of major need for them. They may not be done, but A&M's making a move, and this is the one I want to talk about. LSU is very, very hot. LSU's gotten really hot in the transfer portal right now, and I had concerns about them And I stated as such on the show a couple of weeks ago. I said, man, it was fresh off the Bryce Underwood decommitment. And so the recruiting class took a huge hit. Bryce Underwood decommits, LSU recruiting class takes a huge hit. I come on the air and I say, not great vibes around LSU right now, and I don't like where they're at. They're in a better place than they were this time last year, but I don't love where they're at in the portal. And I said that, and I meant it. And I was right about it. Since then, they've gotten red hot in the portal. And some of you came back at me today and you said, well, what now? Guess you regret saying that. I don't regret saying anything. I was right about it. I'm going to fill you in on what's happened down there. Stuff has changed in the last few weeks down there. And you've seen some of it publicly. Behind the scenes, there's been a little more weight thrown around. And LSU financially is in a much better situation now than they were 60 or 90 days ago. And that's because, unlike maybe this time a year ago or 2 years ago, you've got much more capable people in charge of such things behind the scenes. I know Brian Kelly made headlines when he promised to contribute a certain amount to the fund down there. Let me just say he's not the only one. And not all of that stuff gets made public, but they have made the necessary moves down there. And as a result, they've landed the number 2 corner, the number 10 corner, the number 7 edge. They've landed 3 top 75 guys recently. The operational side of things at LSU, they get it. They know the score. They know what they got to do. They're getting it done. And so, no, I wasn't wrong at all about what I said a few weeks ago. The status quo has changed in Baton Rouge since what I said a few weeks ago. So I just want to go on air and say I apologize for nothing. But I am happy that things have changed down there. More to come. Don't think LSU's done. Texas Tech, just surging. Yeah, I didn't say Texas, although Texas is doing quite well right now. Texas Tech. Very, very interesting times in Lubbock with Joey McGuire and his squad out there. Texas Tech finished 8-4. Had a pretty good year, had a bounce back year. Let me tell you how important that was. It was important because a lot of them got to taste it. A lot of folks in Lubbock, staff, donors, players, everybody included, administrative types, they tasted Big 12 title contention. And that lit the fuse. And now they have gone all in portal. And they've got the number 1 overall interior offensive lineman in there. They are the crystal ball favorite for the number 5 edge guy, I think as early as tomorrow, with Romello Heights. Number 9 defensive lineman, Lee Hunter, also crystal ball there. The number 4 tight end, they just landed like 20 minutes ago, basically. Texas Tech is going to be a really fun team to watch next year in the Big 12. I feel the same way about Baylor, by the way. But this is about Texas Tech. And there was a lot of drama around Alabama the last 24 hours. Whew. Let's see. What can I talk about publicly here? So Jalen Mbakwe was a former 5-star defensive back, played for Alabama a lot this year, and was from the state of Alabama. So he's a true freshman this past year, played a fair amount. There was a headline yesterday. Mbakwe's going in the portal. Automatically, aspersions are cast from people who have probably since had to go delete tweets. Ole Miss is thought to be the betting favorite. It's because Ole Miss was the betting favorite. Pretty sizable NIL offer put out there. Today, Jalen Mbakwe announced, no more. I'm out of the portal. I'm staying at Bama. A lot happened over the past 24 hours. I can clarify as much as I can that there's a lot on the table for Jalen Mbakwe to leave Alabama. He kind of likes it at Alabama. A lot of these dudes, contrary to popular belief, don't really want to leave where they are. Most of them kind of like where they are. But if you were in a very similar position as them, you'd understand you've never seen that kind of money before. And so you've got to weigh things. And oh, by the way, you're not using 50 years of wisdom and logic that you've gathered over your life. You're using 18 years of it or 19 years of it. And you're having to make the biggest decisions maybe that you'll make in your life at a very young age. So what happened here was not that there was a bidding war. It really wasn't a bidding war at all here. It's just that when the sun rose and enough teammates got in his ear, he hopped out of the portal. That happens pretty frequently. This one just got to be pretty high profile. For a guy who was in the portal a grand total of like 5 minutes and got back out, I saw a ton yesterday. I think it's because Alabama's involved, and anytime they lose a player, there's an edit ready to be made, which I don't fault, by the way. I think some of our buddies do a really good job on the edits. I would do the same thing. But I think because it's Alabama, it got a lot of notoriety yesterday. the market's off the rails right now. I was talking to a lot of people on the phone before tonight's show, coaches, player personnel types, some folks in media. I don't cover the transfer portal. I talk about it on the show, but I've got to be well-sourced on it because I don't get in the weeds myself with it because it really makes you nauseous. The market is unsustainable and off the rails right now. If you don't like it, mute the next 10 seconds. If you could see some of the dollar figures, not even the rumored ones, the ones I can confirm on these guys, you would have your jaw on the ground. And it's not a real market, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's a market in a sense that you're worth whatever someone's willing to pay you. It's not a sustainable market. It will not continue to look like that. It's wild, though. It's wild. Fort Worth, Texas is tuned in. Bozeman, Montana. Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Thank you guys so much. It pains me to talk about what we're about to talk about, but we're all adults here. We have to do it. We have to do it. I think, so let's look at the question. John hit me up today. Many of you did, actually. John said, is USC and Lincoln Riley collapsing before our eyes? Losing record, year 3, a bunch of really good players leaving in the portal. My answer, John, is yes. USC appears to be collapsing before our eyes. I don't like to speak in hyperbole. I don't like to jump to conclusions. Candidly, I think it's why I've taken this long to speak this directly. So if you haven't been paying attention since they went 6-6 in the regular season, at least, if you haven't been paying attention, it's been a bad month for USC. They lost one of their top 2 quarterbacks. They lost one of their top 2 running backs. They lost 3 of their top 5 receivers, including 2 of them today. They lost a starting offensive tackle. They've lost 19 total players. Every 5-star Lincoln Riley has landed in the first 2 cycles is gone. They're in major trouble. They don't have good enough players. They just went 6-6 this year. They were in a lot of those games in the fourth quarter. And there's one train of thought that says, oh, that means you're not far away. But look, that only matters if you're moving in the right direction. It could be that that's as close as they'll ever get on this current trajectory. I'm in Nashville right now. It's like 300 miles to Indianapolis. And if I'm headed north, that number keeps ticking down. But if I'm speeding south, I'm 300 miles from Indy, and I'll be 320 miles from Indy in about 5 minutes, and it'll get worse and worse and worse. So, you know, for all the glass half full crowd, which I try to be a part of, that says Lincoln Riley was close this year, man. Give one more year. They'll get over the hump in those close games. You know, I said that about Nebraska forever in one-possession games, and it just never improved. Still really hasn't improved. So they've gone 11 wins to 8 wins to 6 wins in the 3 years under Lincoln Riley. But I want you to imagine this. 15 years ago, I want you to imagine a world where college football looked way different back then than it does now. So let's say 15 years ago. I mean, what, 15? So let's pretend it's 2010. I come to you and I give you a vision of the future of college football. And I tell you, we will have wide open free agency. There will be no cap on spending. And players will move all over the place at their discretion. I think USC would have terrified you. I think if I saw a vision of the future of college football, I would have thought USC is going to be unstoppable. You're a team in Southern California in the second biggest media market in the country, and New York really doesn't have college football. No disrespect to Syracuse. USC is going to dominate. They're going to go scorched earth. And here we are all those years later, and that's the format, and USC sucks. And they're bleeding players. They can't hold on to players. They can't recruit at an elite level. They can't keep their guys home. I have defended these people. I have tried to defend USC. And I go back to this time last year. I go back to Lincoln Riley. To his credit, I will maintain, to his credit, he looked around, he assessed his program. He said, this is not good enough. I don't have a good enough defensive staff. My program philosophy needs overhauling. The identity of this thing, top to bottom, needs overhauling. And he said it publicly. And I said at the time, that's good. That's refreshing. This won't be an overnight thing. But if he's serious about that, then this is the first step in the right direction. We got to have patience. Okay, so here I am a year later. How much more patience should I have? What are the telltale signs that it's starting to take root? Versus what are the telltale signs that it was lip service, but it's not going to work? That is tough to discern. I know it's very popular in this business to just shout in a megaphone and have definitive takes. I don't know that there's a definitive stance to be taken here. I don't think it's guaranteed Lincoln Riley's going to flame out. It's certainly not a guarantee right now that he's going to pull it out of the ditch and they'll be fine. But if you're leaning one way or the other, man, I got to lean the way that USC feels a little cooked right now. And I struggle mightily to look 12 months, 24 months, 36 months into the future, and I see a powerhouse, and all of this is a distant memory. What players are you doing it with is the first question. And secondly, Oregon versus USC. I want you to think about the way those two programs feel to you. Oregon is like a rabid program. Oregon is a program that figuratively just feels like it foams at the mouth and it's constantly about to yank its chain out of the ground and go devour whatever's in front of it. That is how Dan Lanning's built Oregon. And they have taken it to a different level there. USC doesn't feel like that. USC, and I don't want to be disrespectful here, I've got immense respect for the history of that program. They do not feel like that. Let me put it that way. And so you're in the Big Ten now. And you got to trade blows with the Ohio States, Michigan, Penn State, Oregons of the world, and you couldn't even beat Minnesota this year. And is it going to get better? I don't know. But this is probably as healthy a cup of doubt as I've had around USC in quite a while, because I badly want USC to succeed. That's just me selfishly speaking. You can believe that or not. I don't really care. I'm telling you the truth. But I am having trouble. I'm trying to clear the fog right now, and it's tough. It's very tough. Now, if you're an Oregon fan or an Ohio State fan or a Penn State fan, the aforementioned programs there, you're in the playoffs. The ticket market is interesting right now. If you're a Tennessee fan trying to invade Columbus, the fabled Tennessee takeover, which may or may not, but definitely will be happening this Saturday, SeatGeek is your place. If you haven't bought tickets already, they're available there. And I just humbly ask, for your own good, use the promo code PATESTATE10 at checkout. That gets you a little discount. Not free, but gets you a little discount. The number 10, not the word 10. PATESTATE10. So SeatGeek. It doesn't have to be football tickets. Believe it or not, we just bought, should I say this on the air? Yeah, I can. Someone tell Triple H. Someone give a heads up to Nick Khan and company over there at WWE. We bought Monday Night Raw tickets earlier tonight. A lot of the staff is going to Raw when it comes to Nashville in February, and I have not been to a live WWE event in 15 years maybe, but I'm told good things are happening, and so the show's done very well. It's time to reap the reward, and that means walking 2 blocks to Bridgestone Arena and checking out Monday Night Raw. Appreciate SeatGeek. Appreciate them. We used our own promo code. How about that? Okay, let's move on. I'm looking at a piece of paper. I got three pieces of sound on here. I'm just trying to decide like which direction I want to go. Carrie hit me up. That's not Carrie, that's Carl. Carl hit me up today. He said, feels like Ohio State is teetering on the edge right now. What happens to Ohio State and Ryan Day if they lose in the playoff? Now, Carl, I got to ask you, do you mean lose in the national title game? Do you mean lose against Tennessee? Because I think you're talking about losing against Tennessee. All hell breaks loose if they lose against Tennessee. I don't know exactly what that entails, but I think the opportunity for the dynamic to come off the rails is real there. I mean Ryan Day losing his job is what I'm talking about. This is not a stance that I have. It is not a stance I'd support, but that is not my program. So it's really not my business whether they were to make a move on him or not. But there's a reality at Ohio State, okay? It's a beautiful thing about college football. College football is not built on the playoff. College football is not built on anything other than tradition. And college football is not built on the playoff. It's built on rivalries. That's really what the sport is built on. Those things were around long before man came along and said, I think I'll create a conference title. I think I'll create the playoff. That's great. You can enjoy those things. But man, like God created rivalries on the seventh day. They've been here. They are evergreen. They're not going away. They should be of maximum importance. And if you win one, you should feel great for a year. And if you lose one, your life should be terrible for a year. At least if you're coaching or playing. If you're coaching for a living, if you're playing, that is a beautiful thing about this sport, but it's a nightmarish thing about this sport. They've lost 4 in a row in that game. And at Ohio State, the reality is to be a success, you got to check more than one box. Some places, they want to win the national title, and if they win one, of course that's a success. At Ohio State, it's about more than that. You got 3 things that you're really asked to do there. You're asked to beat Michigan, you're asked to win the Big Ten, and you're asked to win a national championship. And I would argue it's not necessarily in that order. Like the Big Ten championship's a distant third to me. And you could put the Michigan game and the national title game in any which order you want to, but I am a big believer that they could take the Big Ten title or leave it if you give them the first 2. And there is a healthy chunk of the Ohio State fan base that if given the option, win the Michigan game or win the national title, would pick the Michigan game. And if I were you guys, I'd feel the same way. I'd be one of the folks who said, I hope we win the national title, but I got to beat Michigan. I need that. The version of me that will exist in February or April will be impacted. My mood will be impacted. My attitude toward my pet and my family will be impacted based off how we do in that game against the team up north in late November. So they've lost 4 of them. There's an interesting dynamic that's forming around Ohio State and the fan base right now that I've noticed. I'm going to be up there this Saturday. I know the fan base pretty well. I know the people in that building pretty well. There's a talking point, a narrative, which is the most overused word in sports, but there's a narrative that's forming that because they've lost that game 4 years in a row, but they're in the playoff again, some people are trying to discount the impact of the rivalry, and they're trying to minimize its importance, but maximize the importance of the playoff. And I don't necessarily buy into that. I hope it's not true. Ryan Day, there's a soundbite circulating of him right now. I'm not going to play it because I got plenty of other things to play for you, but there's a soundbite of Ryan Day circulating right now. I'm going to paraphrase him, but he's basically saying, yeah, we lost the Michigan game, although he didn't say Michigan, and we hate that, but we're in the playoff. Some other teams aren't in the playoff, and the goal all along has been to win a national title. Some people have watched that and said, okay. Other people have watched that and said, oh, of course he's minimizing the team he can't beat 4 years in a row and maximizing the opportunity that's still in front of him. Well, yeah, that's what I'd do if I were in his shoes right now. Oh, by the way, what he's saying publicly does not have to mimic his actual attitude behind the scenes. So I'm going to take you back to last week. You remember I did a segment on the show that was triggered by what Ross Bjork said. It wasn't. It wasn't triggered by what Ross Bjork said, who's the AD at Ohio State. He said things after we did a segment. I'm not saying the two are connected, but I'm going to play some sound for you here. Ross Bjork is the athletic director at Ohio State. And after they lost that game, he goes on the podcast up there. Jeremy Birmingham, Austin Ward, I think were the two he sat down with. And the athletic director at Ohio State was talking about the rivalry game and losing it and moving forward. Hey, Ryan Day's still our coach, but maybe there are some things we need to change. Take a listen to what he said.
Clearly, we wanted to play better, and the players know that, the coaches know that. And so then you have to say, okay, what do you learn from? How do you need to tweak anything? Do we need to adjust the way we talk about that game? Not to say, you can't say it's just another game. You can't say that.
You're not gonna
There's no
minimize it.
way you say that. But you look at other rivalries. You know, Army-Navy is getting played this weekend. They have countdown clocks, and they have different things, but yet they play, 11 other games. And so how do you have big picture thinking, but also hone in on that game?
Now, if you were watching our show right after the Ohio State-Michigan game happened, I came on air that Sunday, I think it was December 2nd, and I said something very similar. Now, what I said I'm about to play for you. There are people who are interpreting what Ross Bjork said there, what Ryan Day's been saying lately, a little bit differently. I'm going to tell you, I think it is very, very emblematic of what I said, but I'm going to play what I said for you, and then I'm going to play an alternative point of view. Roll it, Colin. I don't think Ohio State views this game the right way. I don't think Ohio State views this rivalry the right way. When I say that, I don't mean they don't take it seriously. They take it 10 kinds of serious, but so does Michigan. But Michigan always plays their best football in this game, and recently Ohio State hasn't. So when I say they don't view the game the right way, I don't mean it's not of utmost importance. I mean, however they're viewing it does not bring out the best in them. That was my whole takeaway from Ohio State. They don't lack the players. They don't lack the intensity. They don't lack the focus. Whatever it is they're doing to go about preparing for that game is flawed. Not because of a lack of any of the things I just mentioned. In fact, in the very, very zoomed out aggregate point of view, it's a case of whatever you're doing to play them is not bringing out the best in you. Whatever they do is bringing out the best in them to face you. That's why they're beating you. Despite the fact that you've probably got a better roster 3 or 4 years in a row over them. Now, that is what I think Ross Bjork is saying. That is what I think Ryan Day's attitude should be, and it's what I think his boss, his AD, is saying. It's not that we need to minimize the impact of this game or the magnitude of this game in lieu of, maximizing the importance of the playoff or the Big Ten title or whatever. I think what they're saying is, let's maintain the focus on it. Let's just go about things a different way. Now, that's my theory. But I will tell you, that is not the only theory. There are other working theories in and around Columbus, Ohio. So Juck over with Menace to Sports did a video that I watched in totality the other day. I watch a lot of the Ohio State stuff. But he said something that caught my ear, because a lot of the spirit of what he says, I wholeheartedly pledge allegiance to. He's got a different little working theory about what the meaning behind the message is. I hope he's wrong. Here's what he had to say.
He's 3-3, and you lost your second in a row, or you won 2 in a row and you just lost this one. The reaction is like this because it's 4 in a row. And nothing needs to change about this, in my opinion. This game can always be just as important as it always has. It can mean just as much. And if it is something that gets coaches terminated at Ohio State, I'm fine with it. It is what it is. We cannot allow everything to be stripped away from us in college football because they change the formats around us. The things that have always meant so much to us, the traditions, the stadiums, the uniforms, the helmets, the rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special, in my opinion. So don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And you certainly cannot come out and try to devalue this game when you have lost 4 in a row. That is the softest looking thing I've ever seen in my life.
So I hope he's wrong. Because if he's right, then he's really right. He's right about what the spirit of college football should be, period. I played that because that's echoing the sentiment I've believed forever about what should be of maximum importance in college football. You better beat your rival. Whatever happens after that's wonderful. You go win a conference. You go win a national title. But you got to beat your rival before you do any of that. And if you don't, there's a void inside of you that no man-made trophy in December or January is ever going to be able to fill. And if the folks in Columbus, Ohio are actually adopting the mentality that we need to minimize the impact of this game that we can't seem to win, and will artificially enhance the value of a conference or a national title, then they're going about things at Ohio State the wrong way. I am choosing to believe that's not their purpose. That's not their stated goal. The stated goal is, let's absolutely still invest 100% of our energy into it, but let's approach it a different way. Let's tactically be smarter about it. I hope that's the reality there. I can't prove it. Time will tell. But I will tell you, they were all in on this 2024 season there. And the whole question a little while ago was, if they lose against Tennessee, what happens? I don't know. Anything and everything is on the table. Anything and everything is on the table. You will always hear rumblings anytime a coach loses a rivalry game about him losing his job. And I've always thought it was foolish around Ryan Day. I would still think it was foolish now. If they lose Saturday, I would still think it's foolish. But I do not run that program, and that is not my program, and I am an outsider. And what means a lot to those folks means a lot to them for valid reasons. And if they feel like it's time for a change, I'd do a segment on it the next day. I would state my opinions, but I'd get it. I would get it, because that's how important rivalries are. That's how important winning is. When you state that you're all in and you've been given every resource you need, and there's no NCAA obstacle in your way, there's no sanction in your way, you've got a wide open path, and then you take a crowbar and you throw it in your own bicycle spokes, then you deserve whatever happens to you. That's tough, man. But I'm telling you, I went up to Ohio State in the spring. I sat face-to-face with Ryan Day. We had him on the show. And the words out of his mouth were, I've got to get it done here. And if I can't get it done, they'll go find someone else to do my job. He said it on this show. He gets it. This is not news to him. He understands it's what he signed up for. The number on that game right now, I believe at FanDuel, is still Ohio State minus 7.5. That is our exclusive odds provider, FanDuel. You can go bet the game right now. I'm also telling you, and I do want to pull this up right quick, just to make sure I have current numbers. Okay, so, they're sending me a free shirt too. Sucks to be you, Jesse. I get a free shirt. There are games right now that hypothetically could happen. So next round, if, let's say Penn State were to beat SMU, they would play Boise. I need you to know you can go bet that game right now. Penn State minus 11.5 as of this afternoon. If Texas does beat Clemson and you think they're going to play Arizona State in the second round, you can go get Texas minus 13.5 right now. If you think Clemson pulls the upset, Clemson would be a 4.5-point favorite. It's important to note, by the way, there, either team would be a favorite over the team that has the first round bye. And just so you know, just for argument's purposes, Boise has a first round bye. They would be a 6.5-point dog against SMU. They would be an 11.5-point dog against Penn State. That all courtesy of FanDuel. There's a lot of meat on that bone, actually. I should have probably done a whole segment on that. You can use the QR code here, FanDuel.com/CFB promotion. They got you covered. Wide range of possibilities. And if you don't want to bet it, that's fine. Go over there and just peruse. A lot of good information. Let's end the show the way we do. I was going to say ritualistically, traditionally, every December show, January show this time of year. Back in the spring, in fact, Colin, here's your good endpoint. Every spring, I take your bold predictions and I process them and I give them a rating of 1 to 10 based on how bold I think they are. If I give you a 9.5 or greater and your prediction comes true, you get a chalice of supremacy. Most of them don't come true because they are bold. And the ones that go up in flames, we celebrate by roasting over the December campfire here. First up, Sean from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. My Miami Hurricanes go on a historic run in 2024 and win the national championship. Wrong. Your offense went on a historic run. Defense, not so much. Number 1 scoring offense in the country, number 60 scoring defense in the country, was still there at the very end. They're up by 3 touchdowns against Syracuse. They end up losing 42-38. They miss out on the playoffs. Their consolation prize is the greatest consolation prize in the history of humanity. They get to go play in the Pop-Tart Bowl. That is not sarcasm in the least. Candidly, I'd rather be in the Pop-Tart Bowl than probably be the 11th seed in the playoff. These people at the Pop-Tart Bowl have refashioned their trophy, in case you haven't seen this, to where it is a working toaster that you can insert the Pop-Tarts in, and it pops them out ready to go. That is the biggest one giant leap for mankind, one small step for man. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for breakfast. That's what it is. I'm so proud of the people at the Pop-Tart Bowl. They're paying me nothing to say this. They haven't even sent us product. Blueberry, by the way. They haven't even sent us product. But you know what? Good decisions are being made there. If the people who ran the Pop-Tart Bowl and the people who run the Chick-fil-A checkout line were running college football, it'd be fixed tomorrow. Next up, Mason from Dahlonega, Georgia, beautiful Dahlonega, Georgia, said Jalen Milroe wins the Heisman and Bama wins the SEC championship, 12-1 regular season. Well, this didn't happen. I put a 9.25 on the boldness scale on this. Milroe winning the Heisman and Bama winning the SEC, you could see a little correlation there. Like if one happened, the other was statistically more likely to happen. Well, down the stretch, it was obvious Milroe wasn't going to win the Heisman. But if Bama beat Oklahoma, they could have still gone on to Atlanta and they could have won the thing. Like they could have done half of this, but I don't think both were happening. And I put a 9.25 on that. So that one goes down, and Bama's not even in the playoff. So they are playing against Michigan. Sounds like all their players are opting in. So celebrate that. We don't get that so much anymore. Celebrate that. Next up, this one was complex. Jacob from Annville, PA. Jesse, was Steve Blackman from Annville, Pennsylvania? Yeah, he was. The Lethal Weapon, Steve Blackman. You know, in some alternate universe, he watches the channel. And in this universe, most people don't know who I'm talking about. Pro wrestler in the Attitude Era. Jacob from Annville, PA. Oregon and Texas both win their conferences in their first year and meet for the national championship. Now, I put a 9.25 on this. My thinking was, part of this is due to the bracket. So even if you do call Oregon winning the Big Ten and call Texas winning the SEC, they've got to be like the number 1 and number 2 seed, or else they could end up on the same side of the bracket and they would meet before the championship game. So you needed them to be 1 and 2. Well, I could see that if Texas wins the SEC and if Oregon wins the Big Ten. In fact, if Texas had won the SEC, like Oregon did win the Big Ten, they would have been 1 and 2, and they could have theoretically met up in the title game. But this involves so many things going right, I put a 9.25 on it. This is impossible because, number one, Texas let a backup quarterback beat them in Atlanta in come-from-behind fashion, and they are in a position where they would play Oregon in the semifinal instead of the final. So 0 for 2 there. Lastly, and this one was closer than I thought it would have been. This one came from Birmingham. 2 G5 teams make the playoff. I put a 9.75 on this. It did not come true, so the Chalice is safe. But it got close. Boise's in with a first-round bye. UNLV, had they beaten Boise, we would have had a conversation because UNLV would have gotten in. Would Boise have fallen out? Inquiring minds want to know. And then also think about where Tulane was. Up until a couple of weeks before the thing, Tulane loses to Memphis as a big favorite. And then they go lose to Army. So in the end, they weren't close. But Tulane was floating in like the mid-teens in the playoff rankings there for a while. So we came close. Now, I would argue we may have just come as close as we're ever going to come. Because however they're about to fix this playoff moving forward, there are a few truths in an uncertain world, but one of them is I don't think multiple chairs are going to be dedicated to G5 moving forward. It's not my way. It's the way it's going to be, I think. So that's where it is. I felt a cough coming on the entire show, and I fought through it. And I'm not asking for credit. I just think you should be giving it to me anyway. I appreciate you guys watching so much. We'll be back Thursday. Until then, for Director Colin, for producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great rest of your evening, and God bless.